This special call meeting at the Richlands Town Council will now come to order. Please let us stand for the invocation of the pledge. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight for the special call meeting. Pray for your guidance and your judgment that we may follow in your best footsteps as best we can. And we hope that everyone will be amicable and do the best that we can for the citizens of our town. Thank you for the peace that you give on earth, and we pray for its continued reverence and grace across this continent and the world. Thank you. In Lord Jesus Christ's name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Council, you have before you an agenda, and we have some material that we'll be reviewing tonight. So, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Laura makes the motion. Is there a second? Jan seconds. Is there any discussion on this motion? There being no discussion, I would ask a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Seth?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Jan?
Yes.
And Laura?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion is unanimous. We can proceed. This meeting was called to discuss the 5-megawatt generator, and at this time, I'll defer to the town manager to open this up, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. When I got here back in November, one of the things that became quickly apparent was that we were moving very quickly with the 5-megawatt generator project. I think the third or fourth day I was here, we've got the study back from Power Engineers, so we were moving that way. One of the things that came out during that process was the want and desire, I think, from both council and from Quantum Power and their colleagues to be able to have a Q&A session, to be able to come in. We've got some updated study numbers. We've gotten some updated information on the actual process of where we might be placing this generator, how to be able to get that power from that generator into town. And so we had 3 council members ask us to be able to pull together a special meeting. We've had this pulled together. In your package, you have the original information that was provided by Quantum, and then you have an updated study that's been provided to you that has all of their Class 1 study from Power Engineers, being able to lay out some of the preliminary cost estimates from getting the generator from the potential placement into the town to be able to get onto the grid. And so what we've done this evening is we've asked our partners in Quantum Power and their subsidiary, their group that they're working with, Power Engineers, to be able to come this evening, to be able to answer any questions, to be able to walk through a little bit more, hopefully, about their product and what they're trying to do, and then a little bit of information about the Class 1. So with that, I would be more than happy. I think we've got Q&A, and I don't know if Quantum Power has anything that they would like to walk us through, or if they would just like to be able to take questions and be able to provide some answers.
First, I would like to say something. First, welcome,
Please.
gentlemen. I recognize some of your faces from being here previously. We're very sorry you couldn't come to the January meeting. We're glad you made it safely tonight. Welcome. Now, Jason, may I ask you, I didn't realize you were going to be here, but you're welcome. So do you have something that you would like to present, or what is your role here tonight?
We do have some additional material that kind of takes the original quote that we have provided to the town.
Okay.
And puts in some new numbers.
Okay.
Really just consolidating basically what you've already distributed. Some of the early information, and just updated it with new information, updated the numbers, try to pull it all together.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
If we want to speak on this, where is
sir.
the protocol?
To the podium, yes, sir. I'll call for that in just a minute, okay? Thank you.
Updated with the new numbers from the study.
Okay, so what, Council, I'm looking here, what I have here in front of me, I'm looking at dates. We have power, make sure we all got the right things, same things. Power generation, and this is available to the public because it's here. Power generation capacity for the town of Richlands. dated April 15th, 2023. And then we have documents here, information dated, says, Power Generation Capacity Project, updated cost and deliverables review, November the 9th, 2023. And then we have this, and we got tonight, right? Dated, it says Power Generation Capacity, Town of Richlands, Virginia, dated January the 29th today, 2024. Everybody got all these documents in the right order?
I do.
Okay. Okay. Now, so I really didn't know you were here, but I'm really glad you're here. We probably have questions that you'll be able to help us with. Any member of council want to speak now, or would you rather hear something from Quantum?
Are they gonna go over this with us?
I guess so.
Yeah, I can speak, Rod, just to open.
Okay.
We requested this meeting just because I felt like our agendas are becoming so full. And to give a thorough discussion of this, it would be better done in a format like this where you can ask all the questions that you want, not have to take up the regular meeting time. So that's the design of having the meeting here tonight. But also, so I think what Mark's given us, just looking through this, it would be an updated timeline, an updated cost, and they can come up and kind of walk us through that.
Okay. Is that this one, Seth, that says
Yeah,
January 29th?
the one that they just handed us. But I
Jason,
think.
do you have this? Do you have this one? Did you get it before tonight? Okay, just checking. Go ahead, Seth.
But the idea was to invite them and to invite anybody else that's a player or any questions that we have, so we can kind of get all this flushed out at one time.
Okay.
And answer any questions that council has about this. You got the recommendation from the Power Committee, I think 2 months ago. that we
Electric Committee.
The Electric Committee, yes, that we recommended that we move forward with the project. And this, there's a little bit different makeup on the board now, so I think it's good for us to ask questions, and that way everybody feels comfortable with where we're going with this.
Thank you, Seth. I'll lead with this, and then since you mentioned all the players, I'm glad you're here. We have other players that we've been involved with for years who are GDS and Blue Ridge. Are they coming, do you think, later?
No, sir, they're not coming this evening.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear, since you mentioned that, Seth.
You did invite them, correct, Jason?
Yes, sir, they weren't able to make it this
Okay,
evening.
okay.
Okay, so you guys couldn't make it in January, and they can't make it tonight, so we're all square. Thank you. Have I got that right? Am I misstating anything at all? Speak now, and forever hold your peace. Thank you. Okay, moving on. So, thank you, Seth, for the clarity there. Gentlemen, who would like to come up and address this project? Because there's a lot of paperwork, and some of it we haven't seen. Thank you. If you don't mind speaking from the podium, I would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it real short. This is Mark Romano. I'm president of Quantum Power. Is the easiest thing for us to just get like 5 chairs kind of lined up here at the front? Because I envision this, like we've got, Zach's with Quantum, we got Charlie and Justin are with Power Engineers, and then we got Ben Matthews with Solar, who's the manufacturer's rep. So between, the 5 of us, we could kinda
Would you
field
like for
whatever
them to
question-
come sit in the front
Yeah,
row?
if that's okay. I just don't know what the, if
Oh.
they
Yeah,
just put a
yeah,
fifth chair
Every
in
seat
and
is
we can sit
available.
here and everybody can sit close, and then, because the point
Well,
of
we'll
it,
stay here, and they can sit there.
yeah.
Come on up, gentlemen, and sit up here in the front row, okay? Thank you. That will be the protocol.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, I really appreciate everybody's time. I hate that we couldn't make the trip last time, and I thought the Blue Ridge group was gonna be here, so I hate that we messed it up to where their availability wasn't, because I know they had some questions and things that we were excited about, addressing. But, the long and the short of it is that we have done all the work that we can do to this point to identify any of the issues that are related to placing the equipment there, sizing the equipment properly, providing the extra infrastructure to be able to deliver that power back to the substation, the improvements to be made in the substation, and the ability to deliver that electricity to the residents of Richlands. We have identified a piece of equipment that is capable of operating in island mode and generating a set capacity of power that the town plans to replace the first couple megawatts, and then also take that peak load as it's needed and shave the peak off those higher expenditures that you guys have been through, and then ramp up to a higher capacity as other blocks of energy come offline, and provide the ability to have infrastructure to add another unit and produce, more power. So, outside of that, if you guys want to take a minute and just kind of look through the updated information, and that way we're not rushing anybody, and questions that you came in here with, or any new questions based off of the information that we just supplied you with, and we can just wait. And, between one of us up at the group, we're happy to answer whatever questions that you have.
Mr. Romano, thank you very much. I think it would behoove us to have a few minutes just to look over this.
Okay.
Because it's new material. Okay?
Sure.
And you feel comfortable to do as you wish.
Okay.
Jason, you got an extra ink pen?
I have a question. Is this still the same system that you was talking about at the first meeting, recycling the exhaust off of that generator?
It's a recuperative turbine. Yeah, same unit.
Thank you.
One of the questions that's came up, and I think you got representative from Solar here, correct? One of the questions that came up from Blue Ridge, this was early on in discussion that they had, it was they didn't understand how we could use a gas-fired unit for baseload generation. And do you mind speaking to that? That there are, this is not an experiment. There are multiple of your units in operation across the world for baseload generation.
Yes, that's very much the case. Do I need to go over
Yeah, if you can. I have a couple follow-up questions. I just want to bring up some of the things that have come up along the way, and you're here tonight, and I want you to be able to address those, because I think some of those are the most critical components.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can, that way it's on, they got a record on it.
Okay, yeah. So, yes, our gas turbines are able to operate, we call it island mode as well, so able to, vary load, run at multiple load points. Very, very common.
And so the unit that we're looking at has the ability to, you could operate that unit at 2 megawatts today, and you could change the controls. Let's say that, just for instance, like the storm that we had the other night, and temperatures are, -2. So we know that going in, and all of that, will that be able to be controlled electronically, or will someone be out there manually doing it? Can you explain kind of how that would work?
Yeah, the control system can handle many different set points and the different operating requirements that you would need and can be programmed as necessary. So it can, take load, the different ways. We call it import control as import-export capabilities.
So in that scenario, we can run a portion of this, let's say that it's 5 megawatts total, we're running a constant 2 megawatts, but in a situation like that, to peak shave, we have the ability to amp that up if needed.
Yeah, it'll see a signal to ramp up by its control system, and we'll follow that way. Yep.
And that's one of the critical questions that came because, they were trying to tell us in the meeting that you can't do that. But
Run that by me again, Seth. He was trying to do what?
So Blue Ridge was trying to say that you
When
can't.
did you talk to them?
They were here in our meeting. This is when I was on the council the first time.
Oh,
We
okay.
began to discuss this.
Okay.
They said that a gas-fired generator couldn't be ran, as a baseload generator in their experience. But the difference is we're tapping into the FERC pipeline and we have, a constant and steady stream of gas. And I think you guys have, power engineers, you looked at the numbers and the CFMs and all that stuff that's available on that pipeline. Is that part of what, I know you're looking at the electrical component. You guys did that though, didn't you, Mark? At how much capacity is available with, right, it's not even a close number. And I think maybe that was what they didn't have experience with because we are here in the coal fields and we do have access to this pipeline. And that gives you a different, it adds another component to that you have a constant, steady flow of enough gas to operate the way you need to.
Yeah, and this is also a smaller gas turbine than maybe what they have experience with, much larger, like frame type of gas turbines. Solar industrial gas turbine, we're in the 3 to 38 megawatt size range. So, very specific. Could be more specific to our size class of turbines.
Gotcha.
Okay. Anything else, Seth?
Let me see my notes.
Okay.
I think that was all on that. Just, I wanted to make sure that we answered that or addressed that tonight with you here. I think that's important. I think that covers everything I had in my notes.
Thank you, Seth. Anything you'd like to add at this time?
I don't think so. I'm here, so I'll keep answering questions.
You're okay. You're
Right.
fine. You can
Perfect.
just relax.
Good. All right.
So, that being said, I'm still looking over this thing here. I want to ask you, I have a question. I was trying to read as fast as I can, which is not very fast. Back here, I can't remember if this, it says equipment. Is this the same? I don't know. Quantum Power proposes to the town of Richlands the Mercury 50. Is that the same one you were proposing previously? So that hasn't changed.
This is the same information we've had for months.
Yeah,
He just
what I'm
updated
asking
it
though
with the
is,
numbers.
just to make sure, I'm
Yeah,
with
yeah.
you. It says dated, but has the information changed in here? Updated, are there any updated figures that we need to be aware of in here? Because I'm reading as fast as I can.
Yeah, and we don't need to rush, and we can sit here
Yeah,
another
thank you.
15 minutes and go into it. But no, none of the equipment has changed on the main infrastructure of equipment.
Okay.
There has been some equipment that's changed based off of the last study that we did,
Mm-hmm.
where we were able to say, okay, here's kind of what we need and here's what we don't need, right? So some of
Yes,
that
sir.
has changed, and some of the numbers have reflected. Really, from the very first report that we put out, we didn't have that study done yet, right? So now that we have that, we refined it, and that's what's in there. But there's no major components of the system, its efficiencies, its output, or anything like that.
Is the same?
Yes, all that's the same.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand. You can stay there.
Y'all take your
Whatever
time.
you're comfortable doing. How about over here, I'm just trying to read fast. Cash outlay and projected timelines, are those the same? Or these, we just got it. Are these the same, do you know? I'm on page 15.
I don't believe
I'm
the
just-
previous information had timelines attached to it. I think we had some of the estimates, but I believe this goes into a little bit more detail. on
So the
start date.
timeline is an addition?
This came out of our meeting with power engineers, because we had asked them to, hey, what's a
The electric
timeline look
committee, you
like?
mean?
No, the council. You had asked power engineers, I was here, I wasn't on council, but I actually came back into executive session with you.
Okay,
And you discussed, because you'd asked them to develop a timeline, which you guys developed this timeline, based on ordering and supply chain issues and all that kind of stuff. They asked them to give them a timeline with figures. I think we got that a few months, November, December?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, Seth.
And so I wasn't aware if this outline, if this projected timeline was included with the second set of documents that we had provided to you, or if it was sent at the time that we were projecting the load flow study, which is the next step. I
There
think we
was-
had sent you that
Yeah,
information.
there was still concern about the numbers at that point in time, so that wasn't provided to council. You provided it to the electric commission, but that was all pulled back up because we were still hoping to be able to get some better numbers at it. So I think they've seen a high level, the implementation cost and the forecast out for the increases in the solar cost, but I don't think they've gotten to this level of detail. That information wasn't provided to
Okay.
council before tonight.
Okay, so this is updated cost with those timelines associated with it.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, I can't remember all that.
That's all right. So all this was just a consolidation of information with updated cost structures around all those new numbers. So the timeline, along with the pro forma, the example pro forma on 17 and 18, just provides a little bit more detail.
So this is an addition to.
Those are just updated costs with the pro formas that we had provided before, based on those new numbers.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So page 17 is updated information.
I have a quick question. Is the outlay, is it 18 months, or am I misremembering, like to start to finish, if we were to do the project? That's what I'm trying to recall.
Well, based on this information, it looks like 15 months.
Okay, yep.
Is what the new timeline is.
Thank you.
Okay. What else did you say? You mentioned the pro forma. What else was the additional updated information?
Page 15 with the projected timeline
Yes,
is
sir.
updated information based on new costs. And those additional costs that were outlined in the second set of documents that you had that were dated November, those additional manufacturer costs are what are being associated in here. But the example pro forma and the 12-month and 3-year P&L are based on all those new numbers, so that the ROI for the town could be recalculated in there.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just to be clear, so I get it right, on page 18, the example 12-month and 3-year P&L, that's updated, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Since we have information from you?
Yes. Since we had provided the additional numbers in November
Yes,
on
sir.
what those updated costs would be, had we carried into January and February of this year, I've just put those numbers in there for you so that those costs can be realized on.
Yes, sir.
And what that return still looks like for the town to continue down this path. And on page 17, in the investment section, those numbers are summed at the bottom on what the investment would be. And the grid infrastructure number is a worst-case scenario that we described that the cost would be for the town if the entire build-out had to be new. And that information is provided in the documentation from November.
I remember that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
What is the total distance from the site to the substation? You guys know that offhand?
Roughly 4.5 miles.
4.5 miles. And Mark, you guys, I'm going to throw a question at you that a little bit outside the scope of this, but you may or may not know the answer, because I know we ran this to ground in the beginning, was that the cost to construct the gas line, let's say that hypothetically that we tap the line there and we build the gas infrastructure all the way back to town. Do you remember what the numbers were from that?
I don't.
I don't either, and I want to get that number, but I know that we looked at how that it was much cheaper to build the power infrastructure than it was to.
I remember we got some numbers on it, and it wasn't close. It wasn't like you could consider running gas that long for anything comparable as what you could go overhead.
Right.
Yeah,
Because
I
it was
don't-
multiples.
That was a long time
Yeah.
ago, but yeah, it was multiples. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure on that, and that's one of the things that if we had our ideal world, the gas line would be here, and we could just set all this up in town. Because if you guys will remember, the first thing that we did was we went out to the Acme tap, which is closer, but then we found out that that's a wet gas tap and wouldn't function correctly with the system that we want to do. And we anticipated in the beginning, we were looking at that.
Well, and there could be supply issues and pressure issues.
Right.
And potential downtime and everything. And with the Jewel Ridge lateral, you've got the option to purchase from 3 different, entities on the line with
We-
plenty of clean gas.
We were stuck there. I think we'd have to purchase from Appalachian Natural Gas, wouldn't we?
At the one.
At that one tap.
Mhm.
Thank you. I knew that had come up. I just wanted to
Can I
address
just
that.
ask a quick follow-up on that, Seth? 'Cause-
Yeah.
So you're saying that if we were to run the gas line into town, we would have less pressure and less available gas running at 4.5 miles into town?
No, I wasn't saying that at all.
We were talking about the wet gas tap.
Okay, I
There was a
apologize.
different tap that was only coming off of Appalachian's
So, but
supply.
if we were to run it the 4.5 miles into town, we would still have the same availability of gas, the same pressure, all of that would carry forward into town. We'd have gas in town. So
yeah.
you'd have that ability, you peak shave right off the get-up because our town largely winter peaks because we have electric and we don't have any gas or any other, we're not diversified in how we're able to heat homes. So we would peak right off the bat. So again, this is where, again, I don't know what that number is, but how much multiples of it is. I mean, if it's $8 million to be able to do that, I'm running gas into town, so I mitigate the peak off of it. So now I'm not having to peak shave with 4.6 megawatts versus using 2 to be able to do it. So again, I don't think it's a complete one-to-one. I think there's some benefit of running gas into town that you get in addition to being able to have the gas generator in town. Citizens would have access to gas. Economic development would have access to gas. Again, I don't think that's a one-to-one comparison.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to reach out. I sent a couple messages out. I know the county's been looking at this extensively. I've sent them some messages because I feel like they're going to have probably some pretty good estimate numbers.
For 10 million to be able to run it, I think it was 10 miles.
Okay.
Was to be able to do
Yeah,
that.
we'll get the numbers and see where we're at. Because they've done some studies in the last, 6 months.
It's a different route that they're going compared to what we are. And again, we're in the mountains, and we have rock, and
Yes.
we have to go through all that. I understand that there's an added cost to it. I'm just trying to, again, as I often say, I want to feed 2 birds with 1 stone. And if I can run gas into town, drop the generator right there, hey, I save all of the 4.6 million that I would spend on running the lines. If I spend even that or just a little bit more to be able to run gas, now I have gas in town. Now I can mitigate the peak shaving that we have in the winter, because now my average load is between 10 to 12 megawatts. But when it was 2 degrees the other day in the morning, I was running at 18. So we're peaking at somewhere between 5 to 7 megawatts per time. If instead of them using electric to be able to heat their homes, they're using gas, that automatically shaves off part of that 7 megawatts that I was using. Now I'm just operating against load, and we know that this can operate off load. So now you're just running load versus load as opposed to trying to peak shave. And you're trying to, instead of trying to do two things at once with 1 generator, now you've got gas and you've got electric. But again, if it's cost prohibitive, then that's something. But again, just I'm always trying to look to be able to see where we can do 2 to 3 things with 1 thing when we can do it. We just don't have the cash to be able to do multiple different things. It's hard to be able to run electric lines, then come back and do gas. If you can do it all at once, to me, that would make the most sense.
My guys here with power engineers are telling me that the more the going rate of running gas in this part of the country is about 10 million a mile.
That's a much different number than I've seen. But
Yeah.
again, we'll get the number.
Were you comparing it to in this area? Really? Okay.
Is your mic on, Mr. Romano?
I don't know, maybe.
There's a
I'm
button
probably
down
not
there.
close enough to
It's
it.
okay, you're fine.
Yeah.
I'm just
And I don't know what that number is, but I'll get that. And before our meeting Tuesday, I'll have a good solid number for everybody. And I think that, like I said, I think the county's done some studies. Now, the difference between running the Claypool Hill pipeline, which is from P&M Quick Mart down towards, say, the fish farm, that is a very straight shot, and it's on the VDOT right-of-way. So with this, if to bring a line from there, I think it's doable and it's in the plan. And what I wanted to reiterate with that was what our plan was from the beginning was that to let this thing be twofold. And the first phase, getting the power, so we have power generation. The second phase of that, I mean, we would eventually like to get gas to town, but I think when we looked at it, it was the timing and the cost made it so exponentially high. And really, to do that, we really need to go after some big grant money to be able to bring the gas line in. And I wanted to mention, you know, in my talks with CNX, when they get their office located here, they would love to have gas here. And we've talked about that at length. And I can remember back when I was in elementary school, whoever the person was, may not have been CNX, but whoever that gas operator was at that time, they would come to the school and they started doing education at that point on gas stoves and gas powered, you know, all these things to try to teach a generation, you know, about, because none of us had ever used gas before. But that kind of just fell by the wayside. And, you know, we have gas at some parts of town by Appalachian Natural Gas using their certificated area. And there's a couple of things that we would have to do. But I do think in the long-range plan, exactly what Jason is talking about that's another piece of this puzzle, because if we can bring down everybody's not utilizing electric to heat with, it makes a significant difference. You know, in Abingdon, we have a gas-fired water heater and, you know, gas appliances, and it's very cheap, it's efficient, you know, it's great. And so that's definitely in the long-range plans. But I think it all kind of ties in together, because the other cost that you reach is when we tap that FERC line, that's a cost, it's a one-time cost, because we can use it for the generation and to potentially bring in the power.
Well, the other thing that has been talked about a lot, and I don't know if you guys have kind of abandoned the idea, but I know there was a lot of talk about potential solar at some point. And a lot of this infrastructure that we're talking about bringing in would facilitate that as well. And, you know, I keep forgetting that at the last meeting that we were in, I mean, there was a couple people that were here, but a lot of the information we went over was new. You know, we priced it as if we replaced everything, right? They're all brand new poles. That's replacing every pole into town. That's replacing everything that's possibly there, so that when we do the next study to say what exactly can be kept, what are the load flows. We included every piece of equipment that you could have to have based on a worst case scenario with improvements to the grid. So it's very likely that those costs aren't going to be as high when we actually pinpoint, okay, here's what we need, here's the flow of the power, here's equipment that isn't necessary, you know. So the number was built on everything's broken, it's all got to be replaced. So
And that's the $4.6 million number.
That's the infra.
That is the
grid infrastructure.
Yes.
Can I ask a question at Power Engineers? So you guys, through the power study, you went through the substation, you went through all of the infrastructure going back to there. And you know these numbers include any improvements that we would need to make there to, you know, for this to operate and work, correct?
That's correct. My name's Justin Shipley. I'm the project manager at Power Engineers. Thank you for your time this evening. The initial study that was provided to Richlands in November, it included 3 different breakdowns, and those costs were from the worst case scenario that Mark's already laid out. And then we also looked at some different scenarios that continued to bring that cost down.
This one.
So, you know, we've got some additional studies that we would like to do from the engineering side. We dubbed those phase 2, which you had in November as phase 1 for us. And a simple way to look at the phase 1 report is from a fatal flaw analysis, if you will. So what existing, you know, equipment is in that substation now that needs to be replaced? And then we tie a cost and a schedule, you know, to those numbers or to those pieces of equipment to figure out what our lead times are, et cetera. The other thing I'd like to bring your attention to is, since you guys have multiple pieces of documentation in front of you, what we do as we continue down the path, your schedules and your figures in terms of dollars should continue to narrow themselves and become more realistic. You know, so in our terms, what you guys received in November would be considered a level 5, which is, you know, that's the 25,000 foot schedule, you know, in budget. So as we continue to go down the engineering phase and to continue to support Mark, you know, and the Quantum Power team, you know, everything that we're delivering is becoming more refined and more refined. And I believe that's a good example of the pro forma you guys have tonight, you know, is helping us get a little bit better understanding of what it's really gonna take.
Justin, a second question. In our electrical committee meeting, and I think you went back and updated this, we overbuilt to accommodate if we wanted to drop another 5 megawatt generator. Is that correct, these numbers? Like the line, infrastructure will handle us putting an additional generator there?
we
We
were
mentioned
gonna look
in
it up,
that meeting that we could build it,
A little bit higher, bigger
big-
poles,
bigger,
whatever. Yeah.
Conductor size, should you guys choose to do that. But that's something we would, would want to know prior to construction and engineering. You know, if you guys would look at that ahead of time, that way we could go ahead and build it to that spec. So there's only one cost in the future.
And follow-up question to that.
Seth, I'm sorry, let me kind of draw
Yeah,
that back.
yeah,
to
yeah,
something
absolutely.
Mark had previously said, if Richlands does get interested in the future of bringing in solar, these are some things that the engineering team would need to know, you know, today. So we can put all that in the design, the overhead converter, the pole strengths, classifications. And then when you do bring that solar in, you just tap it into the infrastructure that we're providing on the gas turbine project. So
Are
that's a net
those,
savings.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow. I think I do. Those upgrades, whatever you want to call it, are those included in the costs we're looking at?
Not on this,
No,
not on this one.
not the utmost.
I appreciate
What
it.
he's describing with the larger poles, larger size conductors, all of that, I was saying, we're still at a point where we could modify that to handle that. But all those costs aren't baked into this pro forma.
Thank you. I was just
Yeah.
trying to follow.
But at the same time, there's a lot of costs that are baked into this pro
Right.
forma that very likely aren't going to materialize.
Right.
So it's really that next level of study to pinpoint what's staying, what needs to go, what equipment do we need, what equipment don't we need, right? And part of that can be, what's the extra cost for the larger poles, the larger
Right.
conductor to accommodate that, right? So we can just sharpen the pencil and sharpen the pencil.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
So in talking about solar power or whatever we were potentially might add to a natural gas generator, what we're looking here is what it would take, speaking in general terms, to have a natural gas powered generator. The solar component is not really included in this, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you.
But the point with what they were saying is, let's say that we knew within the next 10 years that we wanted to do a solar project on Trace Ridge. Well, they can lay out that mapping based on the mapping that they've already done. And they know which pole number, which these are all numbered, they'll know which pole number to begin with a path to Trace Ridge. And from that point back, then they could oversize the conductors, oversize the poles to handle the weight and everything else.
For the future.
Correct. And the cost to do that, to go from, and I think we got in a little bit more in the weeds in our meeting, but to go from this one size pole to another, it's not like it's some dramatic cost. But to go back and to do it later, you'd be paying the same cost all over again.
Right.
So that's why it's important for us to think through those things.
It'd actually be
I appreciate that.
To go back and redo it.
That's right, because you got dollar costs today.
The
Yeah.
demo we put in today to reinstall.
Yeah.
the larger classification of whole structure.
So in simple, if we do pursue this, it would behoove us to go first class. Am I understanding that correctly?
Based on the numbers, I mean, we need
I'm
to
just
see that. If we decide we want to do that, we see that number. But, in my mind, I think if we're building this now, and we know we have the space and the gas capacity on the line to add an additional generator, we definitely need to look at, will this cost us an extra $500,000, whatever that number is.
Right.
We need to know what that is because it's definitely worthwhile to do that. And my question, what I was going to with Power Engineers, when you looked at our substation infrastructure, we could handle, I'm sure there's modifications obviously have to be made, but putting another 5 megawatts on there, I mean, that's potentially possible, that's not without any kind of radical changes, or is that, do you know the answer to that? You may not know that, because you didn't look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, and at our current stage of studies to date on the engineering side, Seth, we don't know all of those answers. But I can tell you this, that as far as the substation equipment itself is concerned, anything is possible.
Okay.
You know, and by that, I mean, there's incremental changes on the bus and some things like that that we could go in and install. You know, we would have to take an outage on pretty much the whole town or half the town because there's 2 buses to get that done. But it's very possible to make sure that when we're done with this project, on the gas project, that the town of Richlands is set up for whatever you all decide to provide direction to us on, you know, in the future.
And I think I remember you saying that in the meeting, that, you know, we're not like starting over at ground zero over here. What we have is good. You know, that was one of the assessments that come out of that is, you know, there's some things that we can change and make it better.
Correct.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. While we're here and Quantum is here, and we do appreciate your coming, is there anyone else on council at this time who has questions or any thoughts they would like to share or ask of Laura? Do you want to say something?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. This is all super technical, and when citizens are seeing this on Facebook and in the paper, their question, and I'm just going to put it very simply, is how long will it take citizens to see savings? What kind of savings will they be seeing? And what is the physical financial impact to citizens to build this?
Well, I think that's going to be, you know, mainly up to the town because you're going to be producing power at your all-in costs, including all of your maintenance schedules and everything else. Right now, this pro forma is based on $4 a megawatt, and at the end of the year, it was under $3. But this is still based on 4, and you're producing power at your direct cost is 3.5 cents a kilowatt, and your all-in cost is 5.8. So, you know, how it is that you guys decide to charge, or what kind of money you want to put in the bank, or how much of a discount you want to give to your citizens, or whatever else is basically going to be up to you. But the one thing that you're actually doing here is you are hedging yourself against whatever anybody else wants to charge you for power. Because at this point, the town is committed to provide power to their citizens. AEP has decided that they don't want the infrastructure, that they're not taking it over. And so the reality of it is that you guys are at everybody else's mercy. And nobody else wants to, and anybody else that's in that boat doesn't want to see you step outside of that because they need y'all's leverage to help them buy blocks of power as cheaply as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. So you guys have to decide as citizens whether or not you want to be in that boat and having everything dictated to you, or whether you want to own some of your own power and take control over your power generation future. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Can I just add a couple of things to that? That's without taking in the CapEx cost of any of that. So that's not, your pro forma has an operating ROI, but that's based upon no CapEx and no debt service cost on any of that. Am I reading that wrong? That's just operating, maintenance, and moving. That's not counting for me buying the generator, setting it up, running the power lines. That doesn't include the $13.2 million CapEx cost.
That operating ROI, that was just based on the operating income.
Yes, sir.
And we do have it based on the CapEx. I'll have to take a look at it to know.
I usually do a 10 to 1, so 13 million, 13.2 is probably in the range of about 1.3. So again, that first year, all of that operating income will go towards my debt service payment. If I do the full 13 million in debt.
No, that is right.
Yes.
You are correct on that, but this is, if this is without any debt service, but because we didn't know how to calculate your debt service.
And that's
in this, and
one
this
of.
was just trying to provide you all the numbers
Yes,
based
sir.
on what information we had.
I appreciate that. And that's one of my concerns is right now, I don't know what my debt service is going to be. I don't know how much we're going to be able to bring in on grants. We don't know. And that's one of my qualms with the process to date is that normally, in a normal circumstance, or at least in my past, we would work with the engineers to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed before we begin to do an RFP for the generator. Because as we start to sharpen the pencils, it's going to give me a better understanding of what my upfront costs are going to be able to understand how much my financing is going to be, to understand what my debt service is going to be, so that I can in turn start to be able to understand what my rates are going to have to be to my citizens. That, again, is one of my concerns right now. With the numbers that you provided us in November, that if I don't write you a check, my understanding right now is by the 1st of February for a little over $2 million, that continues to increase. And so it increases by about $250,000 to be able to go to February by the numbers you provided in March. That's where I feel like it's hard to make a decision. I mean, and I'm not the one that has to vote, but from my point of view as manager trying to provide counsel to council, it's hard to be able to have an understanding of what this generator is actually going to affect the rate, because I don't understand how much this is going to cost. There's grants that we're looking at trying to bring in to be able to offset some of that cost. But right now I have a $13.2 million expense. I don't understand what that's going to be on the debt service side. Right now, going and borrowing, this would be tax-free, but even still at tax-free, you're somewhere between 5.5% to 6% on the interest rate to be able to do that. That will add to this. So that $13 million over a 20-year period, if that's how you amortize it, will end up costing you $26 million over the time period. That, again, I think this generator is a great product. My concern has been and continues to be that we're doing this backwards. We should have been able to start work with the engineers first, make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and that this generator works. We'll work on it. We understand what the costs are going to be for the implementation. Then we go and do the RFP, purchase the RFP after I have all of that done. Because right now I'm having to write a $2 million check for numbers that are not sharpened, and that are going to continue to increase if I don't make that decision now. That's it. Forgive me, but it's do I swim with the sharks or swim with the alligators? Because it feels like I'm being pushed into a place to be able to purchase a generator that I believe will work. Fatal flaw, we've gotten to a place where it'll understand, but I don't have fine details. I don't have a level 3 estimate at this point in time. So I don't know that this $4.6 million includes a little over $1 million in contingency. That number will come down. It could come down drastically, which affects what my debt service is going to be and how much I'm going to have to borrow on it. That's where I continue to come back to, is that we went and bought a generator that we then had to figure out would be able to work on our system, and it should have been done the other way. And so that's again, it's hard for me as manager to be able to answer that question, because that's what they're saying, is that it's up to the town to be able to make that decision. And I can't tell you that right now, because I don't know. There's a grant that we can chat about in just a little bit that offers up to about $6 million that would cut this in half. At a $7.2 million price tag is a very, very different ROI than a $13.2 million ROI. And so that's where, again, I'm still struggling to be able to answer that question.
And I don't disagree with what Jason's saying. He's coming into this thing, you've been here about 3 months. And I don't disagree with what Jason's saying, but the reason that this is a little bit different is, number one, we don't have an engineer that works for this town. And number two, we're in uncharted territory because we've never generated power. Well, not in the last 100 years, the town's not generated power. I think they did. We did have a power generation a long, long time ago in the beginning.
Before any of us were born.
Sure. So no one here that works here or is a part of any of this has any understanding of this. And I think that, I get 100% what you're saying, Jason, but the part of this that doesn't include is that we're reinventing the wheel, because we don't know what the wheel is here.
But you just said there's 300 of these generators that are operating around town, and you could hire a consultant to be an engineer. You could have gone and done the engineering work by hiring a consultant to be able to bring them in.
And I'll tell you, and I think if you had been here, that's how we would have handled it. The other problem with that is that we've had 5 different people sit in the seat, and that's the thing. It's just that it's not that anyone has done anything maliciously. It's just that, there's a lot of steps to this, and we're inventing some new things here. But if I could for a minute, I can kind of give you the idea of how we got to where we got to. And I think that's important, and this answers Laura's question as well. is that the last time that I had filled in on council, the one thing that I told everybody who appointed me to council, I said, listen, we have to get and I've been talking about it for months. I said, we have to get an answer to where we're going with our power system, because the issue is all the realtors and everybody in the community is telling people that it costs more to live in Richlands. Now, I'm backing up here. This is 2 years ago, whatever. They were telling everybody that it costs more to live in Richlands than it does outside in the county. If you're on the Richlands power system, you're going to pay more. That was,
Realtors were telling their customers?
yes, because that was the conjecture. And
I missed that word, Seth. The word.
conjecture. That was the known conjecture.
I just get the word straight. Thank you.
Yes, because everyone believed that, whether it was true or whether it was not. Jordan, you know what I'm saying. Everyone believed that our power costs more than AEP's.
Whether it was true or not.
Whether it was true or not, I can't tell you because I wasn't here. Now, if you did the numbers and you broke it down, it was very close. There was a time period when Richlands was higher than AEP. The AEP's had 2 increases since then, and as of today, I will stand up here and tell anybody our power is cheaper than AEP's power. That's across the board. However, as we met with Blue Ridge and other people during that time period, we realized that we are subject to all of the whims of everybody else and all of the things that change because we're not generating any power. So what we did was we spent about 8 months, and Mike was involved and everybody was involved. We went through and read all the contracts. We talked with AEP, their attorneys, and you guys came to the same conclusion. AEP's attorneys and our attorneys came to the same conclusion that you're in bed with a power system and you're in bed with this and there's no way to get out. And these contracts, some of them are 30, 35 years, some 40 years, and there's just no way. And even if you could, they could veto it because we're a member of Blue Ridge. So even if we had a way to get out, they could say tomorrow, no, you can't get out. So the next best thing to that is we need energy independence. You know, and Brother Horton, he really started working on solar with the IDA and looking at different things. There was a lot of ideas that were tossed around, and we wanted to come up with something that we had access to, that we could build, and that we could make a difference quickly. And gas-fired generation is where we settled at with that because we have gas availability. It's something that we can basically, you know, it's not like a solar project where you have to, if you need 5 megawatts, you got to build 20 megawatts. You know, it's not that kind of thing. And so cost prohibitive, you know, it's not cost prohibitive to do it this way. So that's where that all came from. And then we began to back ourselves into how do we get there. Now I just want to let you know that, Jason, because this is really the genesis of how we got here, is this: what kind of power can we use? What can we generate? And we looked at, you know, we brought people in to talk about like putting solar panels on buildings or doing these farms where you do public-private partnerships. And I mean, we ran down a million ideas. But at the end of the day, all the projections, and again, they're just projections because we don't know what's going to happen. But if you look at the trend, transmission costs in this country are on this just massive incline. It's a peak, and they're just continuing to go because no one's stopping them. They can charge as much as they want. So where we got to was if we can generate some of our own electricity, the idea was never to build a 5 megawatt generator and we wouldn't have to buy any power from anyone. That's never been the idea. The idea is to do a blended thing where potentially in the future we can do solar, and we're still going to buy power from the Blue Ridge Group because we're committed to that. And we have investments in a hydro plant, and we have investments in other things, and we're committed to those things because we're committed with 40-year contracts. But someday 40 years is going to be up. And maybe we won't have to be, and none of us will be here, but maybe we won't have to worry about that for our future generations. So the idea of us to generate power, and it became a necessity that was needed quickly. It's, you know, the longer that we wait, the more that we wait, the bigger trouble that we're going to be in. If we get to a place where to live in the town of Richlands, you pay double the cost of AEP. If AEP is charging 15 cents a kilowatt, but to live here, after we pay transmission, it costs you 30 cents a kilowatt, you know, I don't know that just getting rid of all of us on this board would be enough, you know.
Let me back up, Seth. I'm following you really closely. So is that a projection, you're saying 15 to 30.
Yeah, I'm just using numbers, but it could be,
Those are not
it could be.
totally accurate numbers.
No, I'm not saying that's, no.
I got you.
I'm just saying that it
Sorry.
could, and Jordan's been in those meetings too, and if you look at the projections, it's going to increase 10%, 10%, 10%, and you just keep going, and you get there.
I really appreciate that. I get the example, but people hear those numbers, as you were talking about realtors, and they take that for the gospel. And so I urge caution in the numbers that we're talking about.
Well, again, those are just, I'm just surmising numbers, but I'm telling you again today, and I'll repeat this, our power costs are cheaper than AEP's
They are.
per kilowatt.
For the moment.
That's correct, as of today.
I'd
I
like to address
appreciate
a couple of things that were brought up about the revenue, if that's all right.
Yeah.
In this projection here, in the 12-month, which had that, the operating ROI only at around 10%, that was mainly due to the fact that you guys could, we weren't modeling any peak shaving. We weren't modeling any, of that major savings that we think that will happen. That's just based on the fact that we're replacing a couple megawatts worth of power that's being lost. So there's a lot of ungenerated power in that first 12 months that bring that number down, right? So like the year 2 and 3, so showing your 3-year total, once you get up to where you lose the other couple megawatts and you are producing that base load of around 4 megawatts, that's got your operating ROI in that 23% range, right? So if your cost of capital is 6%, your ROI is still 17. It's still pretty solid, right? It's just that first year is a little bit of a loser, but the reality of it is that if you guys don't have the money and you don't move, we're going to be kind of getting into those later years anyway, right? Because those other power blocks are dropping off. And secondly, we've followed the protocol that's been asked of us, and we just come in and bring supporting documentation and try to provide like the best option that we can come to the town. And so like when it comes to the price increases, that isn't us going, hey guys, let's set a price increase that we think will motivate somebody, right? That's coming specifically from Solar, which is owned by Caterpillar, which is a monster company that basically just says, here's how our price increases are going to go for what you buy. So you can plan on it, right? So literally, those are the only price increases that are built into this. It's not, let's put the pressure on them, right? And there was one more point, and I think I probably lost it, but
It's okay.
no. What was the last point? I'm sure it'll come back to me in a minute, but
You're fine, take your time.
Mr. Romano.
A lot of numbers and a lot of gas and going
well,
over
I
the
tried to
table.
wait till they were done because I had
So
the
to
points
speak.
that he had, but I was like, wait, and I was like, and it took me a little bit longer, but it was the manufacturer, it was the capital that was outlaid. No, it wasn't really lead time. It's okay. It'll come back to me because it's floating around. So we could go on to the next question.
Mr. Romano, anytime
Yeah.
that comes to your mind, say, whoa, I
Oh,
got
yeah.
something. Okay,
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Well, one of the other things that, and we did, and I have looked at financing, if we had to finance 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, and just for instance, if we had to finance $9 million of this project, you're talking about at 6%, $780,000 a year in repayments based on 20-year amortization. So that cash flows even in year one based on the savings. So that's kind of where, when I began to wrap my mind around, it's not that we didn't think through those things, we did, but I don't want to say, hey, we're going to get grant money for one. I think it's foolish for us to think we're going to get grant money for 100% of this.
I know what it is.
Go ahead, hit it.
Go ahead.
I know what it is.
Go ahead.
It's the fact that we came in here the last time when everybody was excited about things, and I was like, here's the next study, and it's going to cost $100,000, and it's going to answer all these questions. And if we'd moved forward with it at that time, we would be in here with the level 3 estimate, right?
Yes.
We would have a lot of these numbers whittled down, and it would be better. So the reality of it is that we have been moving as quickly as we can, has been authorized and been told to us. So that was the only other thing I wanted to add.
Thank
And
you.
to that point, we authorized, you guys voted.
Did you ever?
I know.
We approved the 100. That's the only thing I was going to add at that next meeting.
That's what we approved.
Well, I know, but it didn't come.
We're in the, again, we also wanted to wait to be able to get the Q&A done before we move forward on this, to be able to make sure that we wanted to make sure the 100,000 was well spent, be able to have the Q&A session before we did this. Again, and I appreciate the financing, and again, I'm not saying, I want everybody to understand, look, I have nothing against this generator. I think it's a good product. I think it can do an awful lot of great things for the town. My concern is that I still don't have an understanding of how this will affect our power and how we're doing rates for our citizens. That's where, at the end of the day, my team is going to have to run this. And you have a pro forma here saying it's at 4.6 megawatts. If it's at 4.4, my team is going to have to share the blunt for that. They're going to have to explain why I'm at 4.4 as opposed to 4.6. When we get down to brass tacks, I'm the one that's going to have to be able to create a budget that's going to have an electric rate that's based upon these numbers. And right now, I'm trying to do a 5-year rate study. I don't have the ability to look at year 5 right now, or year 3, to be quite honest with you, because I don't have an understanding of what grants I'm going to get. I don't have an understanding of how this is going to actually play out, and it's difficult to be able to do that with these numbers where they are. Again, I'm not blaming you for any of this. Please don't take that.
No, I'm not.
And I'm not blaming anybody for the process. Mr. White's correct. You had a breath of leadership while you were trying to be able to go through this and understand that. I'm just trying, at some point in time, this council is going to expect me and my office to be able to provide rate structures on the electric utility. And I'm telling you that based upon these numbers right now, where we're at, it is next to impossible for me to do that with any specificity to be able to talk about what rate would need to be going into the future.
Jason, may I ask, Laura, you asked an excellent question. We're all up here, or certainly I am knee-deep in numbers, and Seth, you're probably the most knowledgeable person up here, and we appreciate that. Laura's question, I'm getting what you're saying. People in our constituents, what their concern is how will it affect them? And if I'm understanding it right, I'm speaking to the manager, you're not able to give an answer to that.
It's very difficult to be able to do that. I think,
Okay.
again,
I just
if
want
we
to
have
clarify my brain.
additional information as to where grants would be. What is the, when we get the fine print on the pencils, how far down, how much is the delta between the 4.6 and I believe the 3 point something or other million, that was the high bar and the low bar? Where do we end up? I imagine we end up somewhere in there, but again, that's $1 million swing. If I go from 4.6 to 3.6, that's $1 million swing. That has an $80,000 to $90,000 impact on my rate study, which again, with my debt service, which again will have an additional impact upon what my rate is. We just dropped it 10%, and that cost us $150,000 over 3 months. If we're talking about the delta, the difference between 4.6 and 3.1 amortized over a 20-year period, it's no different. And so I'm still in a position where, as town manager, you're going to ask me to create rates. And right now, I don't have the ability. Now, I don't have to create the rates that when this is going to come online. And I should have better numbers by the time we get there. But right now, it's hard for me to be able to make the case to go from what we're at right now, which is 14 cents a kilowatt hour, to whatever it will be in the future, because I just don't have the specified numbers to be able to answer.
How far out do you
Now,
go,
I understand-
Jason? How far out?
5 years.
So, but do you have the information to accurately go out 5 years now?
Yes, sir.
You do, okay. So you know you can lock down power for a certain
Yes, sir.
price. Guaranteed.
Well, within reason. Again, I'm
Yeah.
not looking for, these are plans, and Mike Tyson will tell you that everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. I don't want to be punched in the face, but I know something will happen between now and 2030. So
Yeah.
these are plan rates to be able to go out, but I still need them to be reasonable.
Well, that second block, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when that second block comes offline, not December of '24, but December of '25, that's 2 megawatts that you got to pick up, right?
Yes, sir.
That you
Are
really
you
don't
speaking
know
of the
the
Blue
cost
Ridge
of.
that we've invested?
Correct.
Blue Ridge?
The blocks
Yeah,
power.
cut.
Yeah, I'm talking
purchase.
about the blocks of
I
power
understand.
that kind of got, Seth, I think, motivated the first time, right? When he saw how much that price was going to increase.
Yes, sir.
So it's one of those things where I think that there's more certainty with what that 2 megawatt block's going to cost you with this than there is in waiting.
Okay. I want to say something too. Seth, I appreciate all the work you've done. you've dived into this, obviously, and I think it's great. And you were on the electrical committee, which has done a lot of work, and you led it. I know you did, and that's a good thing. Jason, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. I want to talk about Blue Ridge. In my time here, this is not a pro or con, it's just a fact. When we've bought blocks of power from Blue Ridge, we've tried to buy them as in a blend. I've heard the word blended, and as blended away as possible. And we had hydropower, coal power, natural gas power, solar power. So the portfolio is, and I speak in general terms, is as blended as though someone were having some personal investment in a fund, and you rely on those people to give you a blended investment. I try to make it like that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
All right, so I'm talking about the vision of where this is going, and I personally think we're on a really good idea here for a natural gas powered generator. I was caught also by the talk of blending that we could do in the future, not right now, of perhaps solar power. And I know I've heard various comments, no, yes, I don't know. But I like the idea of blending. I think that's something we could pursue in the future. And as I understand it, we could tack that on, maybe that's not the right word, but we could tack that on to this infrastructure that we're considering building. And where I'm going with this is I think it's really a good thing that we're pursuing these avenues. Nobody wants to have power dictated to them or anything. Dictators are terrible in any part of life. And so while we feel that way, and times do change, we still have relied on Blue Ridge, who's a part of AMP, American Municipal Power, and GDS, our advisors in Atlanta, to help us. And maybe the time has come to, and I do think it has come to rely less on them, but I think we need to be very cautious. And I realize conservative caution can also hurt you, but it also can help you. And so I'm in the middle on this, how fast we should move. Me speaking personally as the mayor. Now, who would like to speak on council? Seth, you've
I
talked.
think Jordan wants.
Jordan, do you want to say something?
You want to go first? Okay.
Go ahead. We need other input.
Okay, I've got random questions. I'll just fire them off here. First off is for Jason. 4.4 versus 4.6, is that megawatt generation? And how does that affect, you mentioned 4.4 megawatts versus 4.6 for your outlay, because that's going to change your denominator. Am I understanding that right?
What I was laying out
Yeah.
is that at the end of the day, my team is going to be responsible for operating the
Yeah.
generator. We're running a pro forma off of 4.6. If
Yep.
you get 12 months into it and something or other works, or gas pressure or something else, and it's 4.4, 4.5.
Yeah.
That changes. It's going to be my team that's going to be looked to go, why is it not the 4.6? And so
Okay.
that's where I'm just trying to understand. At the end of the day, we're going to have to operate this. This is not going to be a figment of someone's imagination. We're going to actually have to be out there working with this and utilizing this. And so the change of even just a 0.1 or 0.2 at that level, walking the waterfall all the way down, could have a drastic impact on what our debt service or what our rates are.
So we're going to have to up-level our employees in terms of that. Do you think we're going to have to expand our electrical department?
I'm not sure yet. I
Okay.
haven't gotten to
Okay.
that place yet, but that's one of the, my understanding is that this is, having read the materials, that it's fairly self-sufficient. It doesn't require somebody to be there operating it on a regular time frame.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that there is going to need to be some sort of upgrade for our staff to be able to understand and be able to maintain it and be able to do it. But again, the maintenance is the other piece. There is an engine overhaul for this probably
That's the
every
big
3 to
warranty.
5 years. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. No, and I just wanted to speak to the pro forma directly about this, is that this was our, trying to provide you, this was in no way trying to give you guys the exact detail for all that, and I think everybody understands that, but
Yes, sir.
it was really just about trying to provide you guidelines for where you could be based on the output, and it very likely could be 4.4. And that's, part of what this next study that we wanted to examine the loads and get those costs fine-tuned, and even update the pro forma, even if it's an example pro forma, for you guys to help provide some of that guidance. Obviously, you're perfectly capable of coming up with those numbers all by yourself.
Yes, sir.
This was just our attempt at trying to grab those costs for you based on those new numbers.
Appreciate that more than
Yeah,
I can tell you.
It was just really I wanted to speak to that so that everybody was.
Thank you. That's very important. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
And
as the manufacturer, we would guarantee the rating, and at overhaul, at exchange, it's brought up, back up to that rating, so every 30,000 hours or whatnot. But you're asking about maintenance, so I believe what was included is the estimate for a full service agreement, so that would be Solar doing scheduled maintenance twice a year, and then the engine exchange every 30 to 40,000 hours. With our full service agreement, we have a fleet manager that's assigned to the project, so it would be one point of contact for your team to anything that needs service or any type of work along the way. That's how that works, so. I didn't know if there's specific questions on the maintenance side.
What's the daily requirement for someone to check in or
Yeah.
Oversee the operation?
Yeah, so we have our gas turbines operating unmanned, and minimum, what we'd like to see is have someone, walk around the unit, once, twice a day, whatever that might be, listen, look, that sort of thing. But everything is computer-based analytics, so our fleet manager is warned or alerted before before any like alarm or shutdown type of situation. He's already on top of it and intervening, seeing what could be happening.
Okay, any more?
I have plenty. So if
Go
somebody
ahead.
wants to go, you cut me off.
Jan, do you
wanna
have
go?
a question?
Okay.
Okay.
So I was also going to add some like validity why this is such a big deal for citizens. So is it accurate to say, Jason, that our budget is 19 million a year? Is that accurate, or do we need to go less? Okay, so if you do that, and we have I believe we said 15 months, I'm making my denominator 23.75, and I'm dividing by 13.1 mil. So that is 55% of our budget over that course of time. So that is why we're all up here stressed out about it. I myself have been throwing around ideas in my head for over a month about this. So the next thing, and probably the most important to me, is why this location? That is the main concern I've had since we started this. I don't care how, we need to diversify power. Nobody in here is going to argue. I don't care. It's stupid if you do argue, you're wrong. So we have to do that. However, I'm concerned about location. I just don't know why it was there. Maybe it's the best it's ever been. Maybe that's it. So could you all speak to that? Why?
It's the pipeline.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
It's the pipeline. So, the reality of it is that that's really, you guys have an asset there that we're kind of overlooking as being really important or a big deal.
You mentioned
Yeah, but guys who have been in the gas-fired industry for a long time have tried to find, transmission lines where they cross, major gas lines, and those got gobbled up pretty quick, and then it's trickled downstream. And so, that location, to my knowledge, is the most accessible, best way to access the gas and deliver the power back to them.
So it's most economical.
It's the most economical, yeah. I mean, because the gas line is exponentially more to run than
I could imagine.
you can imagine running through rock and
Yeah.
stone and roads and, all the stuff going underground with a big pipeline that's under that kind of pressure. I mean, you wouldn't build it under that kind of pressure, but the size of the line required
Yeah.
to deliver what you need, it's a significant operation versus bringing in things overhead.
I've got a
Okay.
question. What size pipeline do we need? 4-inch?
Oh, I don't even know. What is the size?
You're
What
only
is the
gonna
size of
get
the line that
14
connects to
inch
the,
pressure.
six,
Dave, try.
4? I don't even know.
Are you talking about the line?
Yeah,
The
sorry, I
hospital
don't know
runs
right
on
off the bat.
4-inch.
Rick, are you talking about a pipeline from the, where this generator would be located
Yeah, what
to-
size, if you move the
to-
generator to town, what size pipe do you have to have?
Okay, I wanted to be sure I understood your question.
That's a question to
City of
find the
Radford
answer
runs
to.
off a 4-inch.
Well, it wasn't necessarily the size of the pipeline that was the primary benefit to that location. It was the multiple sources of gas that were in that pipeline, that there were multiple companies that you could contract with to provide you with natural gas. And that was one thing that I heard, you mentioned the running the pipeline to the town, is that's, I don't know, unless Richlands has a connection with all three of those providers and they could pool funds together to run that pipeline into the town of Richlands, you're probably gonna have to deal with one of those utility providers, and that kind of pigeonholes you back into the same spot you are with the power. because you don't have those multiple sources in that open source pipeline to tap into. So if you're upset with CNX and the price that they're charging you, there are two other companies that are supplying gas to that pipeline, and that's primarily why we picked that location.
Okay.
Because it's an open source pipeline capable of tapping into multiple utilities to provide that natural gas.
So,
Jordan, also.
I'm
The
gonna
quality
ask-
of the
Go
gas
ahead.
and the supply of the gas is just different.
What, say that
The
again?
quality and the supply. The quality of the gas is a lot higher. The availability of gas on that pipeline is a lot higher. You know, it was very early in the process that we realized with the other location that it was a wet gas, and also there was availability issues for the amount of gas that turbine would need. And that's the last thing you want, is just have all this and then have interrupted service because you can't get the gas. So-
Jordan, the other, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mark, but the other thing with that is, so there's 2 points that we could do a FERC tap there, or we could go to Claypool Hill.
So that was my next question.
Right,
That was my
but
next
here,
question.
but let
Like,
me,
yeah.
let me address the issue with that. If we do the tap where we are, here's the benefit. One landowner. We can get easements from one landowner to do everything that we need to do to get back to town. If you go to Claypool Hill, you're going to go through 100 landowners,
Who is the landowner, Seth?
Pocahontas land.
Okay.
But the primarily 90% of everything that we need to do, we're going to be able to deal with one landowner to get easements and right-of-ways and everything else to do that. But if you go to Claypool Hill, what would happen is, I mean, that'd be great, right? And we can, and Mike knows this because we've used this before. So we could condemn all the people up and down through there that won't give it to us. We can file eminent domain because it's for the public good. We could condemn their property, we could take their property, then we can put a pipeline on it. I'm not really interested in doing that. And that's why if we do it this way, it's so much simpler because we're just dealing with one person. or one
Charlie has some
entity.
updated information on that since our last meeting.
Yeah.
So you could
Okay,
talk about
go ahead, sir.
location pricing.
Speaking of like the right-of-way, dealing with Pocahontas land, we found a contact and got in touch with those guys. And, dealing with costs and stuff, generally speaking, that would have been another exponential cost.
Correct.
And Pocahontas Land, being a localized company as well in the area with people, wanted to work with this area and really, we asked for, an estimate of what that right-of-way was gonna cost, through them was roughly 3 miles. And, we were looking at, probably $3.5 million of our contingency there. When they priced it at $17,000, roughly $17,000 to $25,000, to help the area for that overhead line, to better Richlands people itself, to where, future builds of any kind of solar or anything like that too, that's gonna be one purchase. That was a one-time fee for that, no rent.
So 17K one time and we can use it.
Yes,
For how long would that be?
It's,
as long as we use the line.
As long as you,
it was
They
a,
don't sell it, but it's like a
Yes.
okay, I just wanted to
So that
clarify
was that pretty much takes away a lot of my concerns. I want to control the asset. If I'm going to spend 13 million on something, I want to control the asset.
No, and when I talked to, I think it's Michael Blackburn is their main guy.
Tim Cole was over.
Tim Call. So I've talked to a couple of those guys, and when I first mentioned this to them, I mean, they're like, yeah, whatever we can do to help the town, we're going to do it. It's no problem.
Okay.
And that, you look at, if these guys have been dealing with big projects, and when you go to get right away, and you can get held hostage, and it's going to end up in court, and you're going to file suit.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time that we did some of that, when we were developing the OptiNet system, and so we came up with the idea that, and you have to do it. You're suing churches and airships and everybody else so you can hang a line. And that's not fun, and it's not, no one likes that.
Seth,
This avoids that.
I get what you're saying. I appreciate it too. Eminent domain is a very tough thing. But what was the price? Did you say, or do we know a price for
It
this?
was estimated then at 17,000.
17,000. Well, that's chicken feed
And he said that half of that.
for what we're talking about. $3 million or 13 million.
Right, we had, that $1 million contingency for costs such as that, if we needed to on the right-of-way cost. But, we were looking at, I was thinking $300,000 to $500,000 for a right-of-way acquisition.
And
Well,
also
so
you can
is
use
there
their
any
roads.
reason to discuss any other option than this
Yes,
one?
Well, and also in that right-of-way, the route we used, the gas companies already have roads up there.
Right.
From what we can see on the maps, Pocahontas Land also was very cooperative. They want to give us, permission to survey. They're offering that so we can go ahead and look and see what we would need, if anything. We have that contingency cost for those roads too in our cost. But by the way it looks on maps, there's already a good baseline up there for us to use because they have existing power lines up there feeding pump stations and such.
Right. Okay, well, I appreciate everything. Jordan, any more questions?
I've got a lot more.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
One other thing I'd just like to elaborate with the roads as well. A lot of the line costs when you're doing that is roads and pad construction. Pads being like where you flatten off an area to, drill the hole and put the pole. Well, with these roads already there, our right of way's right off the road. We're cutting costs significantly with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one more question about the pipeline. I'm probably going to show my ignorance here. Those are the only two spots I'm going to say this T off of it and bring that there's only two options to do that.
Correct.
Okay. So that answers that for me. And I think if it's 17K, I think that's a good deal.
I promise we didn't just throw a dart at a map.
That's what I was
There was a
afraid of,
whole
yeah.
lot of research and thought that went into this.
So my next one is why this generator specifically? I don't know anything why it's 5. I don't know why we went with Mercury. So sell it to me, whoever wants to.
I mean, the reality of it is that size of unit seemed to fit the need.
Uh-huh.
Well, the RFP listed out something in that range.
True, yeah.
You got the blocks of energy that are coming offline.
Yep.
Over the next 4-year period, so that unit seems to be able to accomplish kind of everything that you wanted.
Okay.
Replace the 2 megawatts that are coming offline, adjust itself to do the peak shaving so that you don't have those, really expensive months. And then the recuperative side of that turbine is just about any turbine that's in that size range. Industry standard is around 28 to 30% efficient.
Okay.
Whereas the recuperative turbine takes heat that it's exhausting, and rather than just it being waste heat, it recuperates it and uses it to preheat the turbine for the second round for it to burn. So it's really recycling the heat and using it to drive the efficiency up to closer to 40%. So you just have you get a lot more of electricity bang for your buck. It's about 33% more electricity that you're producing for the same amount of gas.
Okay.
And so that's the idea.
I'm good with that. And then I was going to say, in terms of grid infrastructure, that can be applied to anything. Like I could take new Mercury 50 TG out of there and we could put whatever there. The infrastructure is only going to be a benefit in my opinion. I don't care at all to spend on infrastructure. But like down the road, how long was the lifespan of this? Is it 5 years and it has to be replaced?
Of the unit?
Yeah.
The unit itself?
Mhm.
What are the hours though?
Warranty.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can go up to 5 for the lifetime thing.
Yeah, the lifetime of the unit is, 40, 50 years or what, what's required there. Engine does go through an overhaul.
Yep.
We do an engine exchange, and that's every, roughly 30,000 hours. It's condition-based. So every 4 years, we'll replace the engine.
As part of
Let's
the
ask him
fee
that.
that's already built into it.
Yep.
Yeah, as part of that.
Every how many years did you say?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Every how many years did you?
Every 30,000 hours, so every 4 years, if it's running continuously.
How long does that take, the engine exchange?
4 to 5 days.
Okay.
So what we have, we bring in an exchange engine, and then we pull out your engine, put the new engine in. And, other work around that, like we'll do inspections and all that at the same time, so.
And for us as Richlands, the great thing about that is that we're not trying to replace all of the power that we're buying. So if we plan that, obviously we're not going to plan that engine exchange for January the 1st or, sometime in the middle of the coldest spell. We're going to plan that for a time when our peak load, probably fall or spring.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's when we do a lot of our scheduled maintenance is in the shoulder months, so spring, fall, minimum impact.
But that's another benefit for us because we're not trying to replace it all.
Okay. All right, so I've got 2 quick more. I think we already touched on this, so let's not beat this to death. But I would like to say I'm in the middle at it on the topic right now. I do have written down how long will it take to make my money back, and when it shouldn't be my money, it should be the citizens' money back. And I was going to say we do need the rush because we haven't done anything in terms of diversifying our power. However, I would like to point out, as we mentioned earlier, that we did used to generate power and none of us were around when that occurred. So we are, in reality, playing an infinite game. So on one hand, I do see the need to rush. On the other hand, I do see that it just is how it is, that there's no need to get in a super hurry over this. So I just wanted to bring level to that. I don't expect you to answer how long will it take to make my money back or my citizens' money back. But I would like to point out that that is my concern. One of my main
I mean,
concerns.
this pro forma, while it might not be perfect,
Yeah, of course.
is very close.
Mhm.
Just like he said, on the output of the generator, that's part of your guarantee. If you buy a 4.6 megawatt generator and it's putting out 4.3, there's a problem. Something's got to get fixed.
Agree, yeah.
That's a guaranteed amount of electricity that thing is to deliver if it's set to do that. Right?
Okay.
So, and we're also talking about a unit that can run 20, 30, 40 years.
Yep.
Keep the service agreement in place.
Mhm.
You literally have a guy walking around it, checking to see if something's dripping out of it or if it's making a weird noise. That's the only level of expertise that somebody's going to have, that's part of the town's power company to maintain it. And then it's being remote monitored and it's being serviced at the correct intervals. It's going to stay running. But based on this pro forma,
Mhm.
without including debt service, which we're not sure what's going to be a grant.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to be this or that. Your three-year ROI is 43%.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Yeah.
still very safe to say,
Yeah.
including your debt service, including some set of grants or whatever else, 10 to 12-year ROI is very conservative. And depending on if you get a $6 million grant or whatever else, it could be way shorter than that.
Of course, yes.
But I think you're talking about a 10 to 12-year investment on
Mhm.
the high end.
Okay.
If you don't get these grants and you end up paying 6% for your money,
Yeah.
that's a hard investment to beat.
I agree. Agree.
And Jordan?
All right, I have my final question. So I looked up commodity prices, the whole all-time graph. Is there a particular ticker I need to be looking at based on these three companies, or should I just follow the natural gas commodity
Yeah, it's just the
tracker?
commodity pricing.
Okay. Okay, so that is all of them. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Jordan. Who else would like to ask? Jan?
I don't really have any questions because I've answered most of mine, but I'd just like to say that I've been on council for about 9 years with a couple intermissions here and there. And every year I've watched the transmission costs and the cost of power go up. And I keep thinking, what is the future for my grandchildren? And I think we have to have a vision for the future. And I will say that this council does seem to have a good vision. They're eager to step out and look at alternate things for us to work on. So I just want to say that I support doing something for the future of our town and our children.
Thank you, Jan. Who else would like to ask questions or have any comments?
Here,
Gary?
this is a big project, and I'm all about alternative sources of power, and Jan, we do need to move forward with some type. But, y'all have been on the electrical committee, y'all have discussed this, a little bit here, I'm gonna look through this, I know I'll have questions later, after I look through this, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to go by the gentleman that we hire with our finances and our budgeting if we can do this. That's where I would stand on this.
Thank you, Gary. Anyone else? Rick, Laura, any other comments or questions?
I have a comment. So I guess this year will be 4 years that I've been coming to the meetings. I think in this 4 years, I may have missed one meeting. Sitting in this room, when I'm going to say what I'm about to say, I think Mayor Curry may be the only other person. Maybe Mike was here in 2020. I don't remember timeline. So out of everyone in this room was probably only myself and Mayor Curry who was sitting here when this was told to us. Blue Ridge came and gave the council at that point a rate study, and I kept a copy of this rate study. Jan is 100% spot on. I don't know if you guys can see this little chart. These are the transmission costs that Blue Ridge has given for the estimate of Richlands. And this little line, how it's went kind of up a little bit, and then it's going to jump about $400. Seth was pretty spot on in the 15 to 30 cent. I think their estimate is probably, I think he's 15 cent difference, and I think the estimate here is probably about 13 cent difference. So it's pretty spot on. I watched the time when the real estate agents were putting in print ads, not on Richlands Town Power, and that broke my heart because it was a way for people to not be here. This height of this line is fiscal year 2025. I don't know if you can see that. That's a very scary line for me. The height of that line is fiscal year 2025, and if we don't start doing something, that line's going to creep up on us, and then we're backed into a corner, and I don't want to see that happen. So I completely understand, trying to take our time and understand. I also think dragging our feet is not going to help us. I know Mr. May's at a total disadvantage here for coming into this, so far into it. So whatever we have to do to make sure, once again, asking you to get up to speed pretty quickly on something, I don't think we need to. That was part of why I was one of the three that called the special meeting. I think every couple weeks, every month, we're putting this off. We're kind of just heading toward the peak of this line a little bit quicker. And I would be happy to give you guys that rate study that Blue Ridge gave in 2020. It's not a good situation. So I'm whatever you guys need from us to get everybody on the same page and everything. I welcome that and completely agree with Jan with what she said.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else? Rick, do you have anything additional you would like to ask?
I've got a few questions. How do we pay for this? How do we start?
Well,
We don't have our numbers together.
we do. We have a good solid estimate of where we are. We have a worst-case scenario. We know that the worst-case number is 13.1 million. And not to interrupt you, Rick, but what I was wanted to address something that Jason said, is I think that we can work with Jason to get him to a place where he knows what the numbers are. And my suggestion for that is, and basically where some of this basis came from, we know what the blocks of power are going to cost us. If we replace the first year, replacing one block of power, that's gone out of our cost. If we replace the second block of power, that's gone out of our cost. And we know what the cost to generate it is. The only X factor is you don't know how much grant money we're going to get and what. So here's what I suggest. Set it up with no grant money, okay? We finance $13 million. Then you set it up, if you get $1 million, you get $2 million, you get $3 million, and on down the line. I think that's the only way you can do this at that point. But that gives you a number. And just like I shot out here, Rick, if we had to finance $9 million, it cash flows. If we got to finance $10 million, it cash flows. And it's cash flowing from the revenue that's generated from not paying for the block of power, the cost that it costs to generate the power. That one was, I don't have the exact number from me, 13.4, because you're buying, the block of power may only be 6, but you're paying 7 cents transmission fees. So you see what I'm saying? You're talking about a 2 megawatt block of power that you're going to pay, let's just say, I don't mean to confuse people, Mayor. Right, but let's say 13 cents, whatever. But let's say it's 13, but we can generate that same power at 5.5. That's the margin, Rick. That's how we're able to pay for this.
I understand that, but we pay for that power before we buy it, correct?
It depends on.
We've always had to pay.
I'm in the process of buying 2026 power right now.
Is that power block cost $2 million, $3 million, $100,000?
I don't have that right. I don't have that with me. And in fact, that's one of the things that I'm trying to work through right now. So I can have that and have that ready for the February meeting.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, no, I know, but that's where these
comes
numbers
off-
came from.
That number could come off what the generator cost. If it's $4 million for this block of power.
But for him to calculate it, he has to get him. He has to know what it costs us, what we're saving. That's how these numbers came about. What no one pulled this out of the air. This is what the block costs. You remove that. This is what it costs us to generate that same amount of power that we need. That's why year one it's lower. But also here's the other piece of this whole thing that we haven't talked about is that we have the unique ability to do something that nobody who lives in under AEP territory can do. As a municipal power company, we can charge whatever rate that we want to the end user. You can't do that if you're AEP. You can't do that if you're Duke Power, Dominion, or whoever. You can't do that. But in Virginia, because we're municipal power, we have no one that sets those but us. So if we have a large power user that comes and says, I want to buy 2 megawatts of that, we can sell it to them at whatever margin that we want for economic development. And the reason I mention that is because I had a conversation with Delegate Moorfield 2 days ago, and I mentioned this to Jason. Jason was already aware of this, and Laura had sent me the same thing too. The Tobacco Commission has put up $12 million that we can apply for, and I'm going to put this in a form of motion here in just a minute, but I want to authorize Jason to go ahead and it's a very simple application. He and I went over this today.
Is it a pre-application?
Yes, it's a
Let me interrupt
pre-application.
one thing, Seth, that was on Cardinal News, and it came out at least a couple weeks.
Yes. I didn't see it until Laura sent it to me, and then I had a few phone calls after that, and I talked to Delegate Moorfield. But one of the things and he said he will support us. All of our local delegates will help us do that. I think that is a great source of money for us. And then on top of that, I've talked to some people from Vasita. If we can get this and then leverage that into some matching funds from Vasita, then that just continues to exponentially grow the amount of grant dollars that we can get. But Tobacco Commission's aware of our project. They know what we're doing, and they want us to apply, which is great.
Seth, James Campos, he was here for the CNX dedication. How is he connected to this? Is he involved in something that he could help us? I read something on Cardinal News about Mr. Campos. I said, I met the guy. He has in some new position. What is it?
Is he the Secretary of Commerce and Trade?
I can't remember.
Yes.
But I think we met him at the dedication of CNX. I'm trying to think positively who could help us and as well. So he was connected. It was on the news feed, but I don't recall exactly. But I remember meeting him. He gave me his card.
I mean, obviously, I can't promise you we're going to get money from Tobacco Commission, but I'm telling you that sitting members of the Tobacco Commission have reached out to me and said, please apply for this. This fits your project. When they do that, that's a very strong indication that we're going to be eligible to get some of that.
I think this is I remember it was a pre-application.
Yeah, that's
and then
correct.
We have to do more. So,
But I would put that in the form of motion, Mayor, if our town manager can fill out the pre-application. It has a deadline of February the 15th. So
I'll
if
second that.
Yeah.
all right, there's a motion on the floor. Seth made the motion to authorize the town manager to complete the pre-application for energy ingenuity funds through the Tobacco Commission, I believe. And Laura seconds the motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did I state it correctly?
Yes, sir.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on this motion authorizing the town manager to complete and submit the pre-application? There being no discussion, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Okay, Seth,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Jan,
Yes.
and Laura.
Yes.
The motion carries. It is unanimous. So Jason, I think I had read this too. It was in there. I think it's due on the 15th of February, so can you move forward with that, please?
Yes, sir. And the only thing I would like to add, it says exactly right. We can continue to look at grants and be able to do this. The one thing I would make mention, I would defer to Mike on this, and I apologize that we didn't get a chance to talk about this. If and when you make a motion and an ordinance to be able to move forward, I would ask that you add a reimbursement clause to that. That reimbursement clause will allow us any grants that we get subsequent to construction completion to then be able to reimburse against the debt. So just for an example, if we do the full 13 million, we don't get the 6 million in before we've gone to the market to be able to borrow the money. If we put the reimbursement resolution as part of this, it allows us to be able to take that 6 million, put that towards the debt service to be able to do that.
Reimbursement, I
Yes.
understand what you're saying.
Yes,
Does everybody understand what he's saying?
100%.
All right,
Yes.
so in the future, you would like that?
Yes, if and when we get to a point where you're moving forward with the project, to be able to move forward with construction, just
Okay.
to be able to add a reimbursement resolution, because then I imagine that we will be able to look at a number of different grants, and there may be smaller, but other grants that we can look at post-completion to be able to go back either against that or to be able to assist with some of the maintenance. Any of that, we have to have the reimbursement resolution to make sure that we're able to reimburse ourselves for funding that we've already spent previously.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, it's been seconded, it's passed unanimously. We have any other questions for Quantum Power this evening?
Yeah, I'd like to have another question.
Go ahead.
On this, well, first, will there have to be staff on the site for this turbine daily?
No, sir. All that's gonna be required is a pass-by an individual once or twice a day who literally walks around the turbine. And we're talking about the size of smaller than a shipping container, right?
Right.
And he's gonna just be looking for obvious signs of something dripping or there being
Just
a
a visual.
sound that's off or just a real quick walk around visual and hearing inspection of the unit, and that's literally all that's required.
So is it under a shed or,
No, it's just in free
It's just
air.
out in
It's just
open,
fenced
right?
in. Yeah, it's just outside fenced in.
okay,
Yeah, and as part of our proposal, we would offer some 5-day training course as well to get the operator
Okay.
to learn how to,
all right.
turn it on, shut it down, those types of basics. And that's really, what's required.
This operator would be a town employee.
Yes.
Probably your whole electric department. Yeah, yeah, you may, and Jason.
Yeah.
And myself,
Yeah.
there's probably some backups included as well.
Exactly.
And on these service agreements, is it, we would choose one of them, or is that
No,
both
this
of
is
them?
directly with solar. You
Yeah.
could make two choices.
Yeah, it's solar turbines, what we propose is a full service agreement, so it's all scheduled, unscheduled maintenance.
And that's additional monthly, the way
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
reading it.
monthly- It's a monthly fee, renewable every 5 years.
But it's built into
factored
the
into
pro
the
forma.
cost.
So on page 17, right there in the pro forma, if you look at, say, the 12-month or the 3-year, whatever overview, you've got
Okay.
your all-in cost there, cost per megawatt. If you look at it, that's $58 per megawatt. That ends up being 5.8 cents per kilowatt. But part of that cost is your maintenance agreement. So this is an all-in operational cost.
Okay.
The cost for
And I got
replacing
you.
the motor every 4 years is built into this. The cost for them to come out on site 2 times a year and do the visual inspections and change filters and do all the actual required service maintenance with any type of piece of equipment is built into that cost.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So is that a 24-hour a day if we
Yes.
have to have something fixed? But it's automatically going to notify,
Yeah, it's.
because
yeah.
most cat equipment does anyway.
Exactly, and we have our field service representatives, our home office based, throughout the territory. I know for sure we have someone based in Charlotte, multiple based in Virginia, just spread out where we have gas turbines and, within, 3-4 hour drive to the site.
Any other questions? Seth, any other questions?
No, just one other point, and then, is that also, Rick, I know we talked about funding, but additionally, there's a couple of other sources internally that we already have. And one of the things that, my intentions, we have about, I don't know what that number is now because it's changed over the last 3 months, but approximately we had $4 million in the electrical reserves, which was probably $2 million more than we required.
Yes.
Approximately. So my envisionment with this is, that puts us having skin in the game. We should invest $1.5 million of $2 million of those electrical reserves because they are over top of what we need to have. And we have that money that we can use. That money could go directly into the project. As long as we don't reach below the required reserve
I
amounts.
just say, we would have to do a rate study around that.
Right.
That's, again, just a little bit of hedging, because when you do the
You
rate
don't wanna go to
study,
the
as you
max.
saw
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the wastewater that we just went through, you have to have a certain level of unrestricted fund balance
Mm-hmm.
to be able to cover it, or else they're gonna make you raise your rates to be able to bring money into your unrestricted fund balance to be able to do that.
But these are all things that we walked through to get there, and utilizing what assets that we had, and, not to use every dime that we have to pour into something. We want to get as much grant money as possible and borrow as much as we can. I've also reached out to VRS and talked to them, and they're willing to put us into a different type of fund or whatever, or not VRS, Virginia Resources, VRA. Virginia Resource Authority. VRA, yeah, sorry. But they're the ones who finance municipalities and counties and all that, and they offer below market rates based on Virginia's bond rating.
Yeah,
And the only other thing, Rod, and now that we've had our Q&A, I would like us to take a vote on going ahead and authorizing Mr. May to send the $100,000 so that we can get this next study done. At least that comes out of this tonight, and we can go ahead and advance to the next place.
I think that's fair. I do have a question for Jason. What would you need to feel comfortable with this? What timeline and number-wise? And obviously, level 3 study is a precursor. What else would you need?
I think once we get the level 3, I
Okay.
think even just this evening, just hearing a little bit about the land acquisition, some of the road conditions, because that was one of the things that we talked about at the November meeting was, again, because this is it's still a large contingency that we were dealing with at that point in time. It's $1 million. So
Yeah.
you're still at almost, I think, 30% on contingency at this point, and you're not digging underground except for to be able to do that. So generally, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's usually 15% for contingency on a project of this size and this scope. Am I out in left field?
Generally, what we've had has been 30%.
Okay.
Dealing with some of our projects with that.
Okay, and that's, I haven't had as much experience doing electrical construction, so that may be the delta between it.
Jason, I think there was a few unknowns.
Yes,
In
sir.
our pre-November meeting,
Yep.
that kind of drove some of that contingency up.
Yes, sir.
I think as Charlie has indicated tonight, a lot of those concerns have been mitigated.
Yep.
Along with some of the larger ticket items that we were planning on using contingency for, we're
Yep.
feeling pretty good about it.
I think at this point in time, we're getting closer with the number. I think
Okay.
getting the next study will probably get us a long way to be able to have a little bit sharper of a pencil when we're doing this. I think at this point in time, what I'm going to do, and I think Mr. White's correct, is I'm going to start running pro formas on 13, 12, 11,
Yeah.
10, 9,
Permutations, of course.
all the way down to try to be able to get to that point. Where I'm going to lack a little bit of specificity and probably need a little bit of sophisticated help is how I translate that into rates. Because again, this is where I judged Mr. White earlier today. I'm running as fast as I can to try to
Absolutely.
catch up. But that's a world that I understand water and sewer and how to be able to set rates on that. I have not set rates with electric. So that's where I have some conversations set up with some folks to be able to gain some of that. But that's where, again, understanding even if my pro forma at 13 million says based on theirs, I'm still bringing in an extra, $300,000 to $400,000. How does that run downstream to get to the rate? So I'm
Yep.
saving $300,000, but I'm still spending,
Absolutely.
a fair
Yep.
amount of money. So trying to be able to put that into the rate structure is going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of specificity, a little bit of sophistication that I, quite frankly, don't have.
Oh, same.
And so that's the last piece. But again, I think once where we're at with getting a little bit better numbers, running those numbers and be able to get an understanding. Because again, I think at the end of the day, the grants are the 800-pound gorilla in the room
Absolutely.
at this
Right.
point in time. Is if we get $6 million from the Tobacco Commission and $3 million from somebody else, this could all maybe be a $3-4 million project. And at that point in time, I would be a little bit more prone to use your unrestricted fund balance to be able to do this.
Right.
I'm a little concerned about that level. I just want to make sure that we don't set ourselves
We
up
cross
for
that
future.
bridge.
Yeah, no one's committed
Yeah.
to a certain number.
Yeah.
I'm just saying these are options that we
Yeah,
have.
absolutely.
I think getting some more reliable information on that.
Okay.
That's where I'm going to feel a little bit more comfortable and
trying to establish rates.
just trying to
what
be
they
able to
could
understand. Whenever I start a project, I want to have the end in mind the entire time.
Absolutely.
And right now, the end is to be able to lower rates for our citizens because transmission costs are going through the roof. Again, I have no,
I mean,
make no qualm about that.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm trying to be able to understand. We're at 14 right now. If I do this and I have it at $8 million cost, am I getting to 12 cent kilowatt hour? If I get down to 3, am I at 10? And again, I think that's where I want to be able to provide for you all, so that you have that in your back pocket when you go to make this vote. And that's just a little bit of a concern, because it feels like we're making a vote, then getting some information. And again, that's just where the way that I've worked in the past, get the information first, take the vote, then you move along and be able to go do it. This just feels a little bit inverted.
Fair
But I
enough.
think we're catching up by pulling some of the survey, getting some more of that finer detail. And we can make a good decision at this point in time, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Seth, you want to say something?
I was just saying, do I need to put that in a motion, or y'all already passed a motion? Do you feel comfortable with that, or would you like?
If you got consensus on it, then if you all will give me some consensus with raised hand.
Do we have a consensus for the council to authorize Jason to spend, what was it, $100,000?
Yes.
$100,000 for a further study?
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yes, sir. We will get started moving
all
on
good?
that. I'll reach out to the
Okay.
Quantum Powers tomorrow.
All right,
CNX
before we
involvement's
adjourn.
Only selling us the gas.
Correct. And they're willing to help us, but there comes a point we have to decide. You can't we can't just go to CNX and get their help, because
Right.
at some point we're going to have an option to purchase gas from CNX or whoever the other 3 people are. So we just want to make sure that we're not saying, well, if they help us get this,
Right,
that we're guaranteeing we're going to buy gas from
I
them.
got you.
And I don't think that's the case, but yes, but they're willing to do whatever, Gary. Like if we
sure.
called them tomorrow and asked them to do something, they're going to do that for us.
Thank you.
Basically, at this point.
Gary,
you know.
any other questions?
No, I'm good.
regarding? Rick, do you have any other questions or comments? Jordan, any other
I
questions
feel a
or
lot
comments?
better. Thank you all for coming.
Jan, any other questions
yeah.
or comments? Laura, any other questions or comments? Gentlemen, do you have anything else a thought you would like to leave us with?
No, the only other thing that we need to, that you guys need to understand or vote on or decide, right? When we go into this next level of the study, it's gonna tell a lot, and we're gonna have cost, adjustments, right? Is the solar something that you guys want to, analyze and put a cost on what it would take to bring it back? Is adding another turbine, another 5 megawatt turbine, something
I
that?
think that's something we'd have to, that's a very broad general question. I don't think we can answer that right now.
I think,
Need it for this study, though.
yeah, he's
Well,
saying
but
that.
to
I think we
maximize this next study, right? Like-
In the $100,000, is that what you're
Is this
saying?
on the lines and costs?
Yeah. I think we definitely need to know. We
I
definitely
would say
need to
we
answer-
do, yes.
Yeah,
Done.
we got to answer.
Thank
that.
you. Let's
The
move it on.
cost as far as the next phase of study goes is incremental at best. We still have to do the study. It's just a matter of understanding what we put into the study. So the conductors, there's some electromagnetics, without getting into all that, it's different for the conductors. We need to know in the model what to place in there. And the megawatts that we are anticipating that conductor to carry is how we base our conductor, from the beginning that we put into the study. And then we do our watt bar, load flow and things like that. So our question becomes is, should we consider putting into the study the future solar load growth? And then that also comes with a cost estimate for upgraded pole structures, thicker wire and things like that. And if it is 6 to 10 years, whatever your future is, you've already got it in place. Because the construction still has to take place. Really, the biggest realistic cost delta becomes, do I pay $100 for a Class C, or do I pay $110 for a Class B, pole structure? And those are obviously made up numbers, but it's.
Will it be laid out for us, option A, option B, with solar, standard, just the generator? Is that possible?
I think he needs a little bit more guidance.
We can do
What
that.
is the, what I'll do from coming out of here, if this makes sense, right? So, because instead of beating it to death right now, right? You guys want your study based on what this is. I'm gonna go back to him and say, hey, look, what is the extra cost gonna be if we lay out 3 different options, right? One is adding another 5 megawatt turbine. One is putting a 20 kW, solar farm. And then say, here's what the extra cost of that study is going to be to really understand these extra options, right? Is it $10,000? Is it $15,000? Then of course you're going to want it, right? If adds it way up. So I'm just saying that gives me time to talk with, you guys a little bit, or Jason about what makes sense, talk to these guys about what makes sense, and figure out, which one we hone in on, right? Because Jason, how long will it take, you think, before a check will even come out?
We should really get a check within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, you see what I'm saying. So we got time to figure it out, and even if there's an adjustment to it, we got time to make an adjustment to it. But it's not like they're going to be doing anything in the next 2 weeks that they're going to have to redo or undo or whatever else. So we got time to figure it out. So I'll get you guys some options.
That's perfect, thank you.
We just need to know how many megawatts you're anticipating to get to the substation. That's gonna drive.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's part of what I'm going to figure out. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to figure it out. Okay.
Are you clear on what we're asking you to do?
Oh, yeah.
Does everybody feel better on all teams? This team up here? They all feel better? Do they feel like that's where some of this difference is coming in?
Okay.
Everybody good?
Any other questions from members of council? Okay, I think you are good. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. Members of council, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Jan has the second. Is there any discussion on this motion? All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?